So welcome. Like I mentioned before, this is our December culmination of some interesting times in 2020. I'm Alina Turner. I'm the co-founder of HelpSeeker. That was my spelling, so don't worry, Jenny, it's not on you. And I'm joined today by two fantastic colleagues, Dina Beno, who leads the work on housing and homelessness at the city of Abbotsford, but not just housing and homelessness. She's got her fingers on anything to do with social issues and social innovation. So she's going to be sharing some of her her work and her insights and learnings from this very interesting year. And then Jamie, who those of you that have followed the story of Medicine Hat as the first community to end chronic homelessness, you probably have come across Jamie in Googling before, but she's all around systems planning superstar, and she leads that work and has led that work in Medicine Hat for probably, since it began, really around addressing homelessness using a systems approach. And what's cool about what Jamie's up to, similar to Dina, is that they're addressing issues much more holistically and much beyond homelessness and housing, and into domestic violence and prevention, education, etc. And what they'll tell you is that this is the work of and they are probably very, very honored and humbled to get to tell these stories, but it truly is a collective effort in these communities that they will be sharing with you. So as for us, before we really dive into things, I wanted to acknowledge that for HelpSeeker, we are living on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, Kainai Piikani, the Tsuut'ina, and the Nakota Nations. And this is also the home of the Métis Nation, Region 3. And all the people who make their homes in Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta, we're grateful to be able to work and do this important work around reconciliation in partnership with our Indigenous communities, and are humbled to have this privilege and this today to join you from these territories. And I'm sure this is has been quite the year when it comes to thinking about reconciliation as well, and systemic racism. So we're going to definitely be diving into some of our learnings in this space as well, and what's on the horizon for next year. So like I said, welcome and opening. We are going to run you through a bit of what we've been up to in 2020, and some of you get snippets of HelpSeeker in action in various communities. We're going to try to synthesize that and reflect on the kind of ahas that we've had. We are going to be highlighting in particular the work of Abbotsford and Medicine Hat, because they're two communities that are advancing some very innovative approaches to social challenges that I think everybody will relate to. And it's not to put one or the other are on the pedestal against anybody else. It's really an opportunity to reflect. And as you reflect through their learnings on your own community, there might be some opportunities and synergies that might come to mind as well. We're also going to be giving all of you some sneak peeks of what we're up to in 2021 as well, because obviously that's what everybody's excited for, especially on our team, the things that are in the pipeline and are going to be happening in short order. We're going to hit the ground running and with some really exciting initiatives, and I think that would be really great to share with all of you that have been on this journey with us for this year. And obviously we'll make sure we have time for Q&As and some of your thoughts as well. So for those that haven't met us before, and I'm sorry if you are those that have, but a little bit about HelpSeeker. We're a B Corp social enterprise that works to scale innovation in technology and especially digital transformation to resolve complex social issues. And that sometimes expresses itself as a new technology, such as applying machine learnings to predict social issues. Sometimes it's developing new processes on how communities work together to achieve success in addressing these common problems. So we're agnostic when it comes to the social issues. We think quite holistically about the intersection of social challenges with one another, and we use an intersectional approach as well. We're currently operating in about 200 communities, and that came about pretty quickly because it was Travis and I that were co-founded this in 2017. Medicine Hat was really the first place we went to, and really Abbotsford was the second. So let's give props where props are due. We wouldn't be here without you guys and your support for our work, because we exist to help you, and we build and we develop solutions to help you. Our partners tend to be municipalities, funders, decision makers on one side, and then on the service provision end, we work with, sometimes it's public sector service providers like public health, sometimes it's NGOs that are charities or nonprofits, sometimes they're grassroots, informal civil society groups that are mobilizing to tackle these issues, and we bring them the tools and processes to accelerate that work. So a bit of some of the work that has been happening over the last year, we've developed a range of tools and solutions to support systems planning and integration to enhance the social safety net. If you haven't heard of the term social safety net before as well, because again, this was something we had to educate ourselves on as we were getting deeper into this work, it really is this network, pretty fragmented to say the least, but a fragmented network of services, programs, benefits from a whole range of service providers. And there's, we've mapped about 50,000 so far, but really we're just getting going on understanding exactly who's doing what in the social safety net. But those are the key folks that are making Canada's social safety net come to life and do the hard work that you're all likely involved in it at the grassroots. Our work, though, is to support the transformation of that social safety net to be more human-centered, to be more effective and efficient in some cases, so that the front line can have that maximum impact, and that the decision makers have the information and data that they need to know where to invest, to know what's coming down the pipe from a trends perspective, to essentially do their work when it comes to making decisions in the most informed way. So the research, the insights, the consulting work is really about that. What does the community think about the effectiveness of the social safety net? Where are the gaps and opportunities for impact? What are the barriers to move us ahead to reach some of these common targets? How can we improve the experience of the social safety net? And where does technology fit into all of this? That's something that we definitely have a core mandate around. And how can we create more time between the service provider doing the heavy lifting and the end user who's needing the support? And how can we remove some of the administrative burden on them through technology? So the year in review, wanted to touch on a couple of highlights, and this is by no means everything that we're up to, but it gives you a bit of a flavor. So we've been really busy developing some of our flagship products and supports, and I'll highlight some of the systems mapping and navigation apps that we're known for and are constantly improving. The COVID-19 and our work with the communities that we support to accelerate their response. IDAS, so inclusion, diversity, equity, action, and sovereignty, or self-determination, depending on where you're coming at this from, and our work around reconciliation and anti-racism as well. So we'll touch on some of that. The supercluster, digital supercluster work and predicting social issues, that's the InsoTech project. The data to action efforts around domestic and sexual violence in Alberta. And then the two examples as well that I'm going to defer to my colleagues to speak about. So a new ecosystem approach in Abbotsford around social and community infrastructure, and then the Medicine Hat Systems Transformation Project as well that Jamie's going to be speaking more about. All of this work is in partnership. So we are really a tool in the leaders' toolbox. We are part of a much bigger movement here that you're probably all involved in your communities as well. So while we are the ones bringing the stories to you today, know that there's thousands and thousands of people behind the scenes that make this work happen, including folks on our team, our little but mighty team of disruptors, as we sometimes get called out in a good and sometimes bad way for. So I wanted to definitely give a shout out and acknowledge that. A bit about some of the products that we have in the marketplace already that some of you are already familiar with. So you'll probably know us from the navigation apps. So this is and if you don't have this, by all means, go to the Apple or Google store and get it, or just go to helpseeker.org to play around with it. It's really the first time we've had a dynamic inventory of the social safety net at the in the palm of your hands, really. And so we've been developing that product. Medicine Hat was the first one to help with rolling this out as our MVP, our minimum viable product. It's grown tremendously since. So if you haven't played around with it recently, it's come a long way. And the whole purpose of this is to connect people that are looking for services, be they social workers or police or nurses, et cetera, so that they understand what's available for their clients. And then it's also to empower end users to understand what's out there as well, because that's consistently what we hear, no matter where we are in the Yukon or on the island or St. John's or Toronto. It's the same story. People don't know what's out there. So this is meant to solve that problem. Now, on the back end, we have done tremendous work to connect different data sets to add a layer of evidence in the decision-making process for some of you that are involved in systems planning work. So those are folks that are making decisions about, what are the issues in my community? What are the gaps? What are the duplications? Where do I need to double down in terms of social investments, and what do I expect the results to be? So we've created a range of these business intelligence or decision support tools to help with that process. Now, it's not meant to replace other things that decision makers are doing, but it's meant to augment and add another layer of information to that. And the interesting part is, because this is a live dynamic interface, the data coming in is live as well. So for instance, in COVID, we didn't have to wait for the Statistics Canada report 6 months later to tell us what was going on. We knew exactly what was going on in Lethbridge or in Nanaimo or wherever, because we had access to that data, and we could cross-reference it with employment indicators and make associations between, domestic violence going up and what else was going up. How are people looking for help? So that's the kind of the value there, and that's, I think, why we've been successful in having this application to be taken up in all the communities that we're in. So big thank you to all of you that have been part of that, because it gets better all the time, because our team gets all this feedback all day, every day. We literally have Nicole's team of systems mappers that are constantly changing this all the time and making it better. So thank you, and please keep those comments in. It does not hurt our feelings. We take everything and we make things better. So it's come such a long way because of that relationship that we have with our users, and the users of the apps are frontline that say, I don't get it. It needs to be in different languages. There's also the end users that are people looking for help that, you're missing this or you're missing that. Well, we can do something about that. So by all means, keep that coming. The big things that happened this year on the app side, besides the kind of obvious tweaks and constant increases of listings available is we've built in artificial intelligence in the smart search bar. So it's the little thing that says, what are you looking for, which is like this big on the screen, but actually it's got huge science behind it, because it's constantly learning about how people express help, not just how we think as service providers. We're like, oh, we're the domestic violence, or we're the sexual violence sector. People look for terms like help with, rape, or I'm homeless, or I'm hungry. People don't necessarily express themselves in the way that we might describe our services. So this has been a huge game changer over here. And the cool part is it's constantly learning what people are looking for and what they end up clicking on, so that it gets better and better suggestions. Note for those of you that are like, oh my God, are they collecting private information? No, this is completely anonymous. We built it anonymized because exactly why you would think that that's really important, and that we don't need to know who the person is. Getting like big picture data and trends on overall, there was this many clicks on this kind of service. That's all we need to know from a decision-making perspective. The filtering technology, so that we're better and better at narrowing in exactly what people are looking for. That's been another, sounds, it's like one line there, but lots of work on the back end, on the technology end. The translation into 23 languages, and building the infrastructure to blow that up to as many languages as there are. That's been a huge piece, and we had the privilege to work with some of our immigration and settlement sector partners to get that going. And this year we focused on Western Canada, but you'll see shortly that that's no longer true. So while we definitely had that uptake in Alberta, thank you, BC, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, the North have embraced this work, and thank you so much for working with us to get this in people's hands. Now it's exciting to tell you about what's next on rolling this out in other parts of the country. So that's exactly what brings us to the next piece. So as you can see, we're live in these communities, and we've started the mapping here. The first phase of launching in these other communities. That included brushing up on our Francais, because that's been a while. We're lucky to have bilingual members on the team now to support that, making this available in other parts of the country where French is obviously the preferred language. And as you can see, we're already actively mapping and going to be doing the public launches in the coming months, and I'll hold that thought, because there's more to what this is going to look like. So if you're interested in connecting with us as we move through our expansion in these communities, we would love. This doesn't work without partnerships, so this is also like a, please reach out. I'm gonna say reach out to Jenny. She leads our strategic partnerships work, Jenny at HelpSeeker.org, and we would love to work with you. We need those local partners for this to be successful. I'm also going to touch on the COVID response that we supported, and I'm highlighting Lethbridge, acknowledging that this was actually not just happening in Lethbridge. We did this type of support in other communities that wanted to have a technology partner on the social response during COVID. I'm highlighting Lethbridge though, because just how quickly they were able to mobilize, and I just wanted to give a shout out to two folks, because it was quite impressive, and it really set us up for having a framework on how to support other communities that were wanting to do something but didn't quite know how to actually start. So Lethbridge was kind enough early on to mobilize really quickly and share their experience with everybody else as well. So I think we had a webinar up and running on the COVID response, and we were able to actually develop Lethbridge's response model within 48 hours. And then we were able to put that out to our community within a week. So there was just rapid mobilization, and it just speaks to the ability to share learnings from one community to the next, and to kind of cascade good ideas really, really quickly. So as you can see here, this is the early. It doesn't look like that anymore in terms of the pods, but these were action pods that are made up of key players from civil society, private sector, nonprofits, etc., that mobilized basically overnight to respond to the social challenges brought on by COVID. So this was, March of this year. We were part of the coordination and triage pod, like the kind of backbone to keep these running. So City of Lethbridge was the lead from a systems planning perspective. We were the technology partner, volunteer, and Lethbridge and CMHA were doing the civil society engagement and the systems coordination between services. And these were obviously folks that were working on these various issues and putting things into place to be able to pivot everybody to virtual services, to make sure that we understood the needs in real time and were able to put in place supports accordingly. And these pods still continue to function. So now that we're back in quarantine, they're constantly moving things forward in this structure. Our role within that, and where we ended up playing a key role in other communities as well, is to be that technology support. So as you probably remember, the helpers, some of them disappeared overnight, some of them came on overnight, some of them changed completely how they were offering things. So it was really important for us to be able to offer a dynamic interface for them to be able to communicate with the public really quickly about what was still standing and what was available to the end users. So our job was to do that piece, so that the apps and the online dynamic resource directory was turned into a COVID response platform. And we had, that's essentially what happened. That's essentially what happened. And it's essentially why we ended up having so much traction in Western Canada, is because we were able to support communities when they needed something really, really quickly, to mobilize really quickly. So if you go into our app now, you'll see COVID is the first thing that pops up, and that's because we had to pivot our model as well. And again, the team probably racked up way too many hours in overtime to make that happen, but we had to. And because we were able to do it in Lethbridge, we were also able to then transfer that into Abbotsford, into Airdrie, into Nanaimo, et cetera, and support the communities there really, really quickly. And so, that's our piece of that puzzle. But as you can tell, there was a whole lot of people that mobilized to make that happen. And really our job is to help people and help them do their job effectively, because they don't have to worry about the technology aspects. The IDEAS, so I mentioned this before, it refers to inclusion, diversity, equity, action, and self-determination. So at HelpSeeker, we have the tremendous privilege to learn from our partnerships with Indigenous communities, and to have some amazing talent in-house to support us in our reconciliation work. So Monique Fry had joined our team initially as a systems planning specialist, and with a focus on Indigenous relations. And we quickly realized that we were way underutilizing her skills and savvy. And she's now part of our leadership team as VP of Indigenous Transformation and Diversity. So her work has been tremendous in our own capacity building in this area. So you'll see throughout our products, our processes, et cetera, there's always this reconciliation lens built in. We wanted to be not just talking about this stuff, we wanted to make sure it was actually ingrained in our work. So for instance, data sovereignty, that's built into how we manage data, for instance. The way that we do systems mapping with Indigenous communities is completely different than how we would go about kind of a mainstream community approach. So that lens and putting action to these principles has been very important to us. And I would say gives us, in some ways, a competitive edge over some of the private sector companies that do technology work that, you know, may value it, but don't really have the luxury perhaps to dive into it as deep as we are. So we love this work. You're going to see a whole lot more of this because it's part of our core values and it's part of our fabric as a team as well. So that is one kind of plug. If you haven't seen the IDAS webinar, by all means, it's on our YouTube channel. I would definitely encourage you to do that. If you are an Indigenous organization or an Indigenous community that's looking at systems change and want to connect with us on this and are looking for any advice, please connect with us as well. And Monique obviously is our has that expertise, but all of us would love to chat further because it improves our services and products as well. The thing here, of course, and we always bring this well-being wheel out in our projects and in our own team, is the big learning for us through this process is how interconnected the work really needs to be. And the well-being wheel is something that's guiding a lot of our product development, the same as the inclusion, diversity, and self-determination principles. So this concept that everything is connected means that how we work in delivering coordinated access, for instance, has to have a holistic lens. So we can't just talk about housing. How we work around mobilizing the food security ecosystem to advance a social agenda, that needs to be connected in with things like technology, transportation, health and wellness, mental health, nature and environment. It's impossible to talk about things in isolation. As a result, our work is a lot more complicated than normally. It's not good enough to just do a housing needs assessment or a tool to connect people experiencing homelessness to housing. We actually have to think about all of these components together. So that's another piece that's been really articulated through our work this year that has really come to the fore, and part of what I would say makes us unique in our approach, especially when it comes to technology as well. So there are things that we've developed, like the well-being screener, that exactly manifests this in a tool that's meant to connect people to resources, but also take them through a self-discovery process to think about all of these elements of their individual well-being and say, how am I doing on my happiness and creativity? How am I doing on my housing? How am I doing on my safety? And look at those things holistically as a person. When we look at that from a data perspective, you can understand gaps and populations are consistently not doing well in certain areas, and ask the questions, the why and the so what as well. So that's a little bit about our approach to these social issues. And again, this obviously expresses itself in our systems allyship mindset. So as system leaders, we can be allies and show leadership in our allyship. So I know there's a lot of words there, but I think you can get the sense from our work and our working community that we're deeply committed to lived experience. And if you haven't heard me possibly overshare in the Out of the Blue podcast, then by all means check it out if you have an interest in kind of my story and my lived experience of how we ended up getting to where we are and why lived experience and that intersectional perspective is so important to us. So this is a work in progress that we're committed to internally. We are building relationships with First Nations as we expand our work across Canada, and we want to do that if you have an interest as well. So if you are a First Nations community and if you are First Nations government that's looking for this type of support, we are looking for partners that we can support and learn from as well. a bit now to get uber techie and maybe too techie, but I think you're the right audience for this. The InsoTech project was something, again, that came about during the COVID response, when the Government of Canada's Digital Supercluster, which is an initiative to bring Canada into the global space when it comes to technology innovation. And it's really like big players that we probably have no business talking to as a B Corp, like Microsoft and like Lululemon and those kinds of folks. But we made a pitch for investment to be part of the social response to COVID at a federal level. And our pitch was, and again, remember, this is like March, April, so nobody kind of knew what was happening. But knowing what we knew about social challenges, we said there will be major social challenges falling out of this, and it's not just going to be now; it's going to be longer term. So we need to get on top of understanding and anticipating and like hopefully predicting what these issues are going to look like at a community level, so that we can give advice and data-led solutions to the decision makers that are making some of these major investments right now and in the future around these issues. So that was the pitch. This is literally our pitch slide to say, why are we doing this? And we said homelessness, the rising housing instability are going to be issues, mental health and addictions. We know that this 100%, now that we're 6 months into this, is definitely proved correct. Domestic violence and community safety. So we said, let's leverage technology, let's leverage artificial intelligence and machine learning, and start to develop an algorithm to help us predict at a community level where these indicators are going to land as we move through the second and third and next waves of this and recovery. And the recovery is going to be long, it's going to be painful, and there's going to be mass social fallout, and those social fallouts are not going to be the same in every community, and they're not going to be the same for every population. Again, the intersectionality perspective. So let's figure this out. And for stars aligning, whatever, they don't normally fund social technology innovation. In fact, nobody really knows what to do with us, because we're not pure tech and we're not pure social. We're the exact in the middle. So we didn't really have high hopes for this, but they saw something there, and we were successful ultimately to get that investment. So that has been humongous, because we actually now have this model to predict these issues. So we will know in Edmonton what this looks like, in Moncton what this looks like for domestic violence, for suicide, and for homelessness, which means that we can now have the conversation with decision makers at a totally different level around what are the dynamics driving this, and what might be the solutions moving forward. And as much as it's interesting to see what matters, what the drivers are, it's also interesting what doesn't matter. The things that we thought would be really important in predicting homelessness or suicide, and that turn out not to be as significant. So there's some big disruptions out of this work that we are in the midst of processing. Like, how are we going to tell people, like, P.S., that whole thing doesn't seem to be as important as X. So we will definitely be reaching out to some of our colleagues in this space to help us through that communication around this might be a little bit awkward, and then the so what does this mean for decision makers? What does this mean for public policy? What does this mean for funding? Much more surgically than we have in the past, which has been per capita, we're going to give this much money out. What if that creates more problems, not solutions? What if we actually need to be much more targeted in our approach? And what does that look like? How do we communicate that? If you have an interest in this, please reach out. Again, Jenny at HelpSeeker.org, because we could definitely use your help in this. And if you're a community that's looking at trying to kind of get ahead of some of these trends as you build your community plans, or your approach to funding, and you're interested in, what can if we can predict it, we can prevent it, right? That's the theory. That's why we all do want to get to this holy grail of predictions. So if we can prevent it, then what does it mean for service delivery? That's interesting, right? So if you're a community that's interested in that question and working with us to figure that out, reach out. This is going to be really a flagship project for us in 2021 in terms of rollout. The data to action one, this is another one of those things that just kind of happens as well when you talk about, and we were talking about the data we were seeing in our system really early on, and it was like mass jumps in safety searches in HelpSeeker's application. And I was doing a webinar on here's what we're seeing. And colleague from Shift, which is the University of Calgary, they have an effort around ending domestic violence, and then Impact, which is a collective impact entity, backbone organization that brings together 350 domestic violence partners across Alberta. So they were trying to figure out what COVID meant for domestic and sexual violence. Same thing here. And I was saying, like, I'm seeing this stuff's coming down. We need to figure this out. We need to mobilize around the safety issue. So Lana Wells and Andrea reached out and said, can we do something on this? Can we partner and figure this out from a data perspective so that we can anticipate what the issues are going to be, and for the first time actually have a much more accurate picture of what's happening across Alberta? Well, easier said than done, because this sector is so diverse and fragmented when it comes to data sharing. So this has been hugely interesting for us. But the cool part is, and here's the impetus, I'll come back to this. The cool part is this is a fake dashboard because we can't share with you the real dashboard, but we will be able to in the future. We now have communities, including Lethbridge and Edmonton now coming on, that are sharing data. So police data, for instance, understanding police calls, but relating that to HelpSeeker searches, and what are people searching for? What are they calling about when they're calling the helplines as well? What does that look like in terms of police calls? What does this look like in terms of some of these other indicators, like reaching out for housing first support and declaring you have domestic violence in your background? What does this look like when you're in your shelter occupancy as a domestic violence shelter? So there's communities now that are sharing data with us. We have data agreements with them where they continue to maintain ownership over their data. It's their data. It's aggregate data, by the way. So we don't get like here's how many clients and here's their names and here's what they said, et cetera. All we get is like the aggregate information. We make sense of it. We make sure it's apples and apples, not apples and oranges. We visualize it, and we help them tell the story with the data on what's going on. And then it's so what does this mean from a practice perspective? So obviously the big thing, and I'll go back to this one, the big thing that was happening when we started this was we were seeing increases in reported incidents and out of the EU and US. But then in the meantime, our shelters, at least in Alberta, were seeing decreases in people coming in because social distancing. Yet I was reporting in our data that we were seeing these huge, like 6-fold spikes in some communities. Not all communities though, in some communities. And then we were seeing in Google that there was Alberta, for instance, was having a complete different trajectory when it came to search phrases and search volume than there were other parts of the country. So that made us think like, whoa, we need to figure this out. And we need to bring this data to decision makers at the service delivery level, as well as the policy making level. They need to know this, and we need to help them craft their responses in much more, again, surgical and a more agile manner as well. So this is a really exciting thing for us, because we're learning so much about data in the sector. We're learning about what the sector needs in terms of data science, literacy, right? Like and of course we pick domestic and sexual violence to work on because it's the most vulnerable, it's a really vulnerable population and vulnerable when it comes to data as well. So we have to build in these really respectful mechanisms around data ownership and working with a technology company and doing data storytelling in a way that accurately represents what's going on. It's a huge learning for us, and hopefully huge value for the partners that we've brought into this process along with us in this learning. So watch out for that for more. If you're an Alberta entity that's doing this work, Grand Prairie and Lethbridge, your dashboards are ready. We're working on everybody else's. So you're hearing more about what those are looking like already. And if you're other communities and are interested in this, by all means, reach out to us, because it's an ongoing thing. Like, we're not going to get there overnight. You got to build trust. You got to build these agreements. Like, we got to, do the data collection, et cetera. So it's an ongoing project for us. So that is kind of my bit, and I will return at the end to give you the sneak peek of what's coming down next year. I gave you a little bit of tidbits of what's been really exciting and from a learning perspective for us. But I really want to make sure that you listen to people that know a whole lot more about this at the community leadership level. So I'm going to hand it over to Dina now. And happy to move your slides, Dina, as well.
Thank you, Alina. Good morning, everyone. I want to first acknowledge that the work that I do with the City of Abbotsford is on the traditional lands of the Stolo Nation and the Métis Nation of the Fraser Valley. My role with the City of Abbotsford is to oversee the city's social housing, homelessness, and community infrastructure unit. And as of April 2020, the City of Abbotsford was also awarded Service Canada Reaching Home designated community status. And that's to respond to issues of homelessness and vulnerability for the years of 2020 to 2024. We're administering the Hub of the Fraser Valley community entity through an intentional tripartite relationship with Illuma Native Housing Society, who is British Columbia's Indigenous Service Canada community entity, and Van City Community Foundation. So I'll talk a bit more about how the City of Abbotsford work that HelpSeeker has supported us is actually helping us to enhance our work on a more regional scale, as our community entity will focus on enhancement for Abbotsford, Mission, and Aldergrove. With respect to, I think your earlier comment, Alina, about humbling, and it definitely is. My role is really one that kind of walks alongside and supports community. And so what we have seen is significant community culture transformation in Abbotsford as we started our work in spring of 2015 to start the development of a coordinated intake and referral model. And that was through Service Canada Reaching Home funding. But what we recognized, it was one thing to build a coordinated intake and referral model, but you needed something to refer into. And that was the start of the Abbotsford Homelessness Prevention and Response System. And to date, we have over 52 community organizations, all levels of government, the business sector, faith community, Indigenous communities working alongside through a community invested, mobilized approach to respond to homelessness and vulnerability. But what we also understand is that this needs to be integrated across systems and sectors. And so the slide that you're seeing now really focuses on our second generation systems work and really starts the journey when HelpSeeker came to help us start working through what the HelpSeeker platform would look like, and then how that could be further integrated through an ecosystems approach. So collectively as a community, we recognized that 4 pillars were critical and intentional as we moved forward together as a community. And so all of our systems work and policy development work, we're embedding equity, inclusion, restorative practice, and reconciliation. And we have come a long way, but we have so much more to do. And so, as you said, Alina, we're learning and growing with communities across Canada. And so we really welcome the opportunity to be part of a broader community of practice ongoing. But through HelpSeeker's work in our community, we have focused on housing needs assessment, poverty reduction action strategy, childcare inventory and action plan, an age-friendly policy with a focus on vulnerable seniors, and looking at how this integrates into our Service Canada's required coordinated access, ongoing data and shared outcome measurement systems. And we too look forward to a dashboard that brings in multiple data points. What we've also learned from this is that we're currently working at a provincial level with the BC Centre of Disease Control around their social environment framework, and how our work really embeds that ecosystems view into that. So we can then work more closely with land use planners, for example, or all levels of government or hard infrastructure when we're looking at through this community development infrastructure lens. So all of our work is focused on built, social, community, and communications infrastructure, and those interconnections in the interface. So I appreciate the value of HelpSeeker's work and helping us to better understand what this data really means on the ground, and then in turn, deeply listening to our communities to understand how this is impacting and influencing our lives. We learned a quick lesson around pivoting as well in our community about COVID. And so we focused on emergency, immediate efforts, but with an eye on how to scale those up through sustainable and more transformative ways. And so that's where it's actually helping to deepen our systems. So right now we're, for example, looking at a food ecosystems enhancement. And so that's everything from traditional ways of gathering and sourcing food from farms, looking at innovation, and how this focuses on food justice and food security. So we're animating all points of the continuum. And much of those learnings were heightened during COVID. So it's also utilizing what funding is coming into our community in a way that's more sustainable. So the HelpSeeker data has been one of those tools and mechanisms to help us to identify what type of systems level decisions and planning we needed to do. This is a great slide because it is talking about poverty through a different lens. Again, one of our projects in 2021 will be working more closely with our sustainability department around energy poverty and energy justice. And so they really want to interface with all of this collective work that we've done through our community development infrastructure strategy study work with HelpSeeker, and how to build this in more closely into what they're working on around climate change and built environments. So our middle years development index or instrument that's shown on the slide, for example, that was administered through Abbotsford School District, but through partnership with the school district, Ministry of Children and Family Development, Archway Community Services, United Way, and the City of Abbotsford. This was our one pre-COVID measure. So it surveyed grade 3 and grade 7 right before COVID. Now we'll be able to come back in February of 2021 and administer this again with the same cohort that will be grade 4 and grade 8 to show rate of change. So that'll be very interesting then to map against some of the HelpSeeker indicators and other data sets that we're pulling in. I think British Columbia communities are unique in some ways too, especially if you are interconnected with a Service Canada, because we don't have direct access to HIFIS, which is an information system, because BC Housing has been awarded that primary access with Service Canada. So this also provides us opportunities for readiness and pathways to BC Housing when they are at a place where they can roll it out collectively across the province. But this does give us a sense of accessible data equity, and that data sovereignty as a local community, at a local level communities, to be able to understand what the data is reflecting in our communities, and also for communities to inform as well. So I think overall, our next steps are to really enhance our community multi-sectoral performance measurement system through the HelpSeeker data interface and the systems integration work that we're doing, to overall continue to provide that integrated perspective across the ecosystem of supports and needs, both through a social safety net perspective and an overall community infrastructure as well. Thanks, Alina.
Thanks, Dina. That's awesome. I jumped your slides to like kind of make sure to kind of go with what you were talking. So hopefully I didn't mess
No
you up
worries.
too much.
Great, thanks.
Like I think we've worked together enough that I'm like, oh, I think I know what she's going to say.
Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, over to Jamie from joining us from Medicine Hat to talk about the Medicine Hat Systems Transformation Project.
Thank you, Alina. So welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So a little bit about the Medicine Hat Systems Transformation Project. I don't have too many slides to go through. I will say, building on what Alina has talked about, as well as what Dina has talked about as well, much of the same approach here in Medicine Hat. I'm going to drill down a little bit into this one for you. This project was actually a couple years in the making. It was an idea that was born from a community engagement with lived experience a couple years ago, and it was actually around someone's personal information, and they did not have the ability to manage who they shared what with. And that was kind of the impetus for change. We also recognize that sometimes we're a funder here, so we oversee the provincial and federal funds for homelessness initiatives. So receive money from Government of Alberta and obviously federal government for this, for the homeless serving sector here in Medicine Hat. And with that, we like to look at how we can actually look at effectively investing and making really positive outcomes at many different levels. So of course, for the individuals that we serve, but also for the workers that are in those systems and for the systems themselves. So really take a broad community approach around that. This project was born out of really recognizing that we had a tendency to overserve people, or we create programs and services, and we expect people to fit the criteria of that, instead of actually flipping that around and looking at what and listening differently to what actually people need and what they want. So it's the Systems Transformation Project is really about disrupting systems and processes that we, myself included, have actually helped develop. And it's taking a step back and looking and listening about what people need. This project would not have been possible without, thanks Lena, without investment. This was a definite partnership with HelpSeeker that assisted with this project and has been here in Medicine Hat a very long time to help with systems and community transformation in our plan to end homelessness. We receive federal money through Kmart Housing Corporation, through the National Housing Strategy and the Innovation dollars, and then also from the Government of Canada through the Reaching Home Strategy, specifically the designated funding. So this work absolutely would not have gone forward without that investment from funders and the dedication of the people that sit around the table with us and actually do this work and help really dismantle and destruct some systems. So the premises and the impetus for systems transformation here in Medicine Hat. Yes, we are known for our work around ending chronic homelessness. Yes, we still have people that actually experience homelessness in our community. Good systems are not static systems. Good systems are dynamic systems, and that means people will enter and exit into homelessness. So it's about the system response to actually get them out of that state. So our premise for this specific systems transformation is around the fourth industrial revolution and looking at the ongoing automation and using smart technology to actually apply to the social sector. It's something we don't do, and we don't do it well yet, yet being the key word. COVID-19 has been one of those, let's find a silver lining. For this, it's around systems transformation, community collaboration, smart investment, and dismantling systems as well. The other thing is systems fatigue and fragmentation. I think when we actually look at, I don't like the term silos. People that talk about silos, I tend to think that you are the one in the silo then. But we look at systems fatigue, it's about the systems all meeting and the sectors connecting where they need to actually connect. Noticing that we have systems that are really fatigued and therefore not delivering what they're funded to do or what they should be doing for the end user or the participant. Systems as a means of maintaining and disrupting power. This is something we talk about a lot at a community level, and I think it needs to be talked more so in other sectors and other communities as well. The systems distribute power very differently depending on where you're situated in that system. If you're an end user, although we say the systems are there to assist you and the programs are there to help you, how we actually design and deliver that is not always what that end user is receiving. From a funding perspective, it's about the ability to help manage and make it easier for programs to actually report on data and using evidence to inform those things. So it goes on all layers of that, from funder to end user, and really look at, let's separate that out and let's look at what is really going on. So the outcomes will always be reflected in the approaches that you take. So for this systems transformation project, we invited community leaders to sit on our systems transformation committee. And when I say leaders, I need to be really clear. This was not about title and position. This was about leaders in community that were known to or had the potential to actually look at systems, disrupt them. We had representation from food security, so the food bank, from recreation, from the women's shelter here with Natasha. We had schools. So we didn't look just within our own system, and that's really important. We tend to get into that, I'm going to say, isolation space of groupthink. So this was really about the ability to bring together those individuals that actually could disrupt, knew their systems well enough, or had perspective about systems because they've dealt with or had really critical thinking around how to examine those systems. We had health on board from the onset as well, which obviously really helped during our COVID response and helped to transform some of these things. So this systems transformation project had to be based in human-centered design. I talked about when we first opened up that this project was around someone with lived experience had mentioned something, and they have been with us throughout this project and are consulting, and really important to do those things and make sure that that end user and those that are actually impacted by the services have a say in how it's developed. So our roadmap. When we received funding from Cambridge Housing Corporation, we, of course, partnered with HelpSeeker, came up with a plan, research and startup. A lot of background research went into this. We wanted to explore digital ID and what that was and how it fit. Technology is not my forte and not my area of expertise, but we are slowly learning along with and getting informed by the best of the best about how this can actually apply, and really looking at innovative solutions to complex social problems. We tend to overcomplicate things, so this using innovative thinking and design to help alleviate some of that, and then applying technology as a tool to actually create a different user experience. User experience meaning for the end user, for the staff that are supporting people, etc. So roadmap, research, startup, learning from other sectors, of course, I've talked about that a little bit. We had a large innovation forum, and we decided to do this project in the middle of COVID. It was a decision that we made there was a small window of opportunity, and we thought there was a little bit of, I'm going to say, a lull during the pandemic, and we decided just to go for it because the work needs to continue. And it's important work when we actually look at systems transformation and why we want to transform those systems in the first place. Innovation Forum, it was a virtual, it was fantastic. It really generated innovative ideas. From that, we went into innovation labs, where it was really articulating what we heard and having more design labs within smaller groups. So there was a lot of smaller groups. We talked about the different areas of potential solutions that came up. And then we decided on 2 to 3 game changer prototypes that we would actually develop and have artifacts to actually show. The implementation phase of this is around the development and ongoing implementation of the strategies itself. Oftentimes when people have, either it's plans to end homelessness, plans to end poverty, including this project, where people tend to fall flat is around the implementation of it. So we wanted to have an implementation strategy and a go forward. So with that is a communication strategy, funding models attached to it as well, because you can't do the work unless you follow through with the work. Meaning having sufficient funding investment, and early adopters and people that have bought into the importance of doing systems transformation work as well. So this is a 4-minute video. I have one slide after this that I'll go into a little bit more detail behind the scenes, but to sum up all that tech stuff, this is what our project actually achieved.
Medicine Hat is a great community to call home. Even so, life can still get difficult at times, and let's face it, we could all use a little help here and there. One of the largest aids to our community is the social services sector, having a robust network made up of over 1,000 services. However, one of the challenges is that end users don't always know what's out there or how to access it. Like you, we believe in helping each other live healthier, happier lives. So this got us thinking. What if we designed a new system where every decision made was with the end user in mind, bridging the gap and time spent between users needing help and actually receiving it? By prioritizing the needs of the user, we can create an experience that makes information painlessly accessible, transparent, and ridiculously organized. We can pull all our efforts together and create access points that are easy to use, simple to navigate, and remarkably understandable. We see the end user being in full control of their help service journey. They choose when, where, and how they access help and share personal information. The improved user journey is complemented by a consistent, universal process where users are triaged to the appropriate resources no matter what their needs are. This drastically improves service quality, eliminating industry issues such as repetitive referrals, assessments, endless forms to fill out, and preventing users from repeating their story and needs over and over again. We envision a paradigm shift in the ways in which hundreds of Medicine Hat providers work together to meet community needs. Over the past 6 months, we've worked across organizations and end users to prototype immediate solutions to move us in this direction. One is a virtual a la carte service menu, much like a restaurant, but with social service providers, where users can effortlessly access specific services through comprehensive yet clear information that's easy to navigate and up to date. If desired, users could even anonymously share certain parts of their service history to be matched with more relevant options. Users can connect directly with service providers and select specific services rather than bundles they don't need. Users could also book appointments, enabling an increase in efficiency and speed for consent, eligibility, intake, assessment, and referral processes. We can integrate this solution with My Alberta Digital ID, which would be like writing your name in a form online, and within the blink of an eye, your information is already there and government verified. This can ensure service providers that you are who you say you are and confirms all the benefits you might be eligible for. Plus, you're in the driver's seat, controlling who you share your personal info with and how much you want them to see. From here, imagine making it plausible and efficient for service providers to communicate and collaborate with each other so they can all spend more time helping people in their service. Behind the scenes, we can create back-end information sharing and data collection processes while protecting personal information with best-in-class blockchain technology. We can monitor outputs and gather user feedback to improve and enhance the service to maximize its effectiveness. Essentially, this will provide a way to tangibly measure the success of the services, to know what's working and what's not, and what we can do to serve people better. This new system transformation is something that has not been done to date, and implementing these concepts will reaffirm Medicine Hat's role as Canada's social innovation leader. At the end of the day, it's all about ensuring resources are being used to deliver as much meaningful value to the users as possible. And that's a win for all parties involved. Medicine Hat, you deserve the best. Let's go get it.
So that video reflects all of our tremendous work in community, and really just summarizes where we want to go with this. Couple key things with that. I'll just wait till the slides are up, but I'll keep talking here, folks, is one of the things we heard a lot about when we were doing our design labs and whatnot was around how much time service providers spend Googling what is available, even in smaller communities, and not having an up-to-date service blueprint of what is actually available. That will help prevent this. When we look at this app and the technology around this and the innovation applied to it, I can do my banking online, but for some reason I can't make my appointment if I'm homeless or need housing or other social services online. So it just seems like a huge disconnect in our sector that those things can't be done consistently across the sector. Yes, there may be pockets of it, but you look at the banking industry and you have choice whether you want to go in person or be virtual as well. So we need to apply that same concept to this. So really important, what users experience, service provider interactions, ability to have control over their digital ID, a service menu of what is actually currently relevant and available in community to meet their needs, and the ability for the technology to help kind of sort that out. Alina spoke to it earlier and brilliantly about that search and other things that might be available in that virtual one-stop shop. Again, I can do a lot online, but it seems if it's social services, I can't do that. Whether I need food or clothing or translator even, can't do that online for some reason. So that's kind of the above the iceberg and what the end user will see. Below is where the really heavy lifting happens and the stuff that we actually maybe don't talk about and where bulk of the work happens. So below that waterline, we have to make sure that everyone has that data aggregation. We are known to be a data-based and evidence-informed. If the data does not support it, it doesn't get funded, it doesn't get invested in, we don't proceed with things. Integrated coordinated access, huge. Medicine Hat has always had since the onset of our planning days and systems planning work. Integrated coordinated access is one of our foundational things that we have done well and has helped transform our systems so brilliantly. Artificial intelligence and the machine learning as well, very important that we incorporate that. Really important, that's at the bottom of the iceberg, because systems transformation work is about transforming the system, not applying a tool. That will help ease the work of the system. That is not what is actually going to fix the system. People fix the system, funders fix the system, and having good community planning and good data help actually reshape that system. Really important, being really proactive and predictive about who might actually enter systems and what that looks like. Systems planning, of course, and service blueprints is something that our community and our leadership group really honed in on. And we're really excited about this one. The service blueprints, I can't tell you what's readily available in Medicine Hat beyond our homeless serving sector and what's funded, whether it's funded or available in community from other partners, or how that works, because they change all the time. So also with that, it's the commitment of community and that paradigm shift to ensure that information is updated, not for programs and services, that's secondary, but for the people that are trying to access that and better their lives or get assistance where they need assistance. One of the questions just in closing that we get asked quite a bit about is, will more money assist with this? And I have to say, Medicine Hat has always said this, we're maybe the little bit outlier. How we choose to invest money at the local level has been part of our success as well. We invest in strategies that work, and we also change our strategies when they are no longer meeting the needs of community. I think sometimes we get bogged down in doing what we've always done because we've always done it. People are familiar with that. We maintain our status quo. We don't. We never have. So it's about, it might work for the first 5 years of our plan, and we need to change our strategy. Practices don't apply to all people all the time. So the ability not to evolve means you have a static system again, and that you're not moving, and you're not creating a dynamic system where the needs are. Imagine if we had the same systems in place prior to COVID. We would have very different issues at hand right now. Also can't say enough about the support from all levels of government. and the commitment to actually look at investing a little bit differently as well. I think when we have investment around innovative and technological solutions that are applied to the social sector, that will make a difference. We can't keep doing what we've done without applying some of these innovative technologies to actually reframe the work that we are here to do and to serve people.
Thanks so much, Jamie. That was, oh man, I learned something all the time, even though like I should know everything about these projects, but yeah, I only know my perspective. So this has been great. Thank you so much, ladies. Yeah, I really appreciate your time with us. And I guess it's over to me to wind down 2020 for all the fun we've had and give us a bit of a taste of what's coming up. So I'm not gonna, talk too much about what's in 2021, but I do want to whet everybody's appetite on some of the exciting projects that we have. And I know we've got some of our team members on this call as well. So some of them don't even know some of the things I'm going to talk about. So I'll touch on them, and rest assured we're going to be keeping our community in the loop on more details around all of these. So the big things that are on our radar and major strategic initiatives on our end is number one, mapping Canada. So, and I'll tell you shortly about what that means. Secondly is actually enhancing our decision support system. So all of that work that we talk about using data and informing better and better decisions at the funder and policy level, that's a huge focus coming up this year. And as Jamie Lee aptly noted, the concept of integrated coordinated access and scaling that effectively with processes, tools, technologies as well. So we'll begin firstly with our kind of first time that we're formally able to share our partnership with the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation as a major investor in our scaling as well. And this is how we're going to be able to map Canada in 2021. We've been able to have this huge privilege, and I'm always amazed, like, why, what do they see in us? Because they're a big deal. If you don't know who CMHC is, if you're a homeowner, you probably do, because you probably had to pay them some money at some point to insure your mortgage, obviously. But they're the lead entity that is in charge of the National Housing Strategy rollout. So they have a huge interest in understanding the social safety net from that perspective. It's really hard to end homelessness. It's really hard to ensure everybody has a home that they belong and a community they belong to. So having this national level partnership with them is a huge game changer for us. So it's been a deal that's gone through many layers of due diligence, and that has required that we don't really talk about it until it's actually fully a done deal. There's going to be a ministerial announcement in January or February, depending on the minister's schedule. But this is a huge thing that's going to enable us to, if our team thought we were moving fast, get your sleep on, because 2021 is going to be a ride. But we're extremely excited. We're so privileged. And just a big shout out to Steph Jones, who's a VP of Innovation there, that just for some reason saw something in HelpSeeker, and Travis and I as co-founders that he really championed us with the federal government's family around our value add to their portfolio as well. So thank you. And we're so excited about this partnership, and we'll share more with our community as this unfolds as well. This project, as I mentioned before, is going to be able to bring us from 200 cities to 5,000 cities or communities, because some of them are more rural communities as well. This is going to enable Canadians to have access to 500,000 services in these 23 languages that we mentioned as well. And then, of course, from a CMHC perspective, their ability to understand supply and demand dynamics, to understand predictions, and add that insight into their decision-making process as they roll out the national housing strategies is a huge opportunity as well. So the rollout that we're in already, so as I mentioned before, we're already live in the West, but we've already started, as you can see here, we're well underway already in Ontario, and starting to move into Quebec and the Maritimes as well. So if, again, it's a bit of a shameless plug, but we need your local support for this to be successful. CMHC and us are able to do our part and in this work, but ultimately it's about supporting the community. So if we don't do a good job engaging with you and supporting you, and for you to get value out of this, then we just have a mass failure. So we don't want to do that. We want this to be a collaborative effort. So please reach out if you have any interest, if you're in one of these communities, because again, we're just starting to do this deeper engagement work. And if you have an interest, Jenny at helpseeker.org. I'm sorry, Jenny. On the decision support system, this is really bringing data to bear on policy and funding in a whole new way. And I know we've all kind of play in that space, like we look at homeless counts, we look at core housing needs statistics, but I'm imagining having all of that and an engine to make it make sense to people that don't necessarily live in that space all the time. So it's our job as the tech and research solutions to make your life easier through these products. So to do that, we need to create the platforms and the tools to help tell these stories with data to add to the decision-making process. So things that would be assisted through this suite of solutions are obviously planning and management of service operations and funding operations for those of you in the funding space, budgeting and allocation. So funding what at what level, and what will I get out of that at the end of the day? Like, what are the KPIs, the performance management and outcomes that I can get out of this? Decision making for these rapidly changing times and problems that are usually hard to see in advance, but what if we could see in advance? So how would that impact the kinds of decisions we're able to make? And of course, there's a whole lot of things that take a whole lot of time right now. There's things that are really time and human intensive that we think we can resolve through some of these technology innovations. So enabling people to have more time to do the thinking, the strategy work versus the admin work, whether you're at a policy level or at a funder or service coordination level. There's a lot of work. I think we can all agree that takes forever. Because you get a request from the mayor and it's, how many units do we have of this? Well, that's like a 20-hour project. What if it wasn't, right? So we're working on a bunch of efforts in this work, and we're going to be focusing on a couple of things. And as you can see here, the decision support system, so this is the technology backbone, if you will, takes the information from these various businesses or business operations and outputs actionable information. So you've got raw data sources. You've got like billion data points in 200 different places. We all know that. We've got our systems mapping, so all of the services and the ecosystem that we mentioned before. And then we've also got community specific data. So there's obviously StatsCan and CMHC data, but then there's also data that is just for your community. And Abbotsford is a great example because they had so many data inputs for us to develop their poverty reduction strategy or their childcare action plan, their age-friendly strategy. So that was a really important project for us because we were essentially experimenting with creating this decision support system for Abbotsford. But we did it the old way, the old school way, which is that we basically overworked our team, asked Dina and Linda to burn the midnight oil to get us all this data and help us make sense of things. And our team was out there doing the mapping and collecting all this data, making sense of it. But the thing is that what we were also doing on the back end is understanding how to kind of structure this process so that it could be replicable and to essentially make Dina's life way easier next time around, because we already built the system for this to automatically happen so that she doesn't have to hunt this down every time and our team doesn't have to do that every time. So the housing needs assessment, and lots of communities do these where, you know, you have to figure out how many units you need and for what target groups, etc. This took forever. Right, we had, and there were so many requirements that we had to check off and things like that for meeting the Abbotsford needs. And this is not a complaint, because it was an opportunity for us to experiment, to say, can we automate this? And the answer is yes, we can. We can't automate 100% of it, but we can automate a whole lot of it. So that just shrinks the time between, you know, having to do this work and delivering this work so that you can move on and actually, you know, build housing, like get funding into the ecosystem to get things going. Too much of our time is spent in these reports, needs assessments, the homeless count analysis. Do you know how long it takes to get a homeless pit count out? Which is actually like not that complicated from an analysis perspective. And again, my team has done these for many years, and sometimes it's months, and sometimes I've even seen it be years. Like, what if we could just, you know, build that report automatically? Now, it's not 100% because you can add the local flavor to it, but we can automate a whole lot of it. So of course, these are all the kinds of focus areas that we're really interested in working on. So needs assessment that might be around childcare or poverty or domestic violence. Housing, again, housing needs is a really low-hanging fruit, and so is the homeless count analysis. So we're chatting with our colleagues at 7 cities to see if this might be something that's going to be, again, putting us on the map in terms of technology innovation when it comes to decision support, because then we can actually bring in some of our predictions into this work, the dashboards, the visualization of data, and again, more value, less time, less money, less cost, because ultimately, if you can build this, you don't have to charge the $100,000 for a report and take a year to do it and need to deal with a billion RFPs and consultants and all of that. So yeah, I was a consultant, so I get it, but I also get it. we can do better. So that's the work that we're going to be looking at. Our Q1 and what's coming up, and this is to support our communities around the point in time count analysis, is this auto generation of the pit count analysis as well, making sure that checks just the basics around reaching home standards, but is also able to feed the information automatically into HIFIS, the ability to compare to previous years, to do community level customization. So for instance, you saw that even in the look of the presentations, Medicine Hat's brand and look and feel looks different than Abbotsford's. We need to be able to visualize in a way that is customizable as well and fits the brand guidelines of various communities as well. But again, to do that without hiring a graphic designer for another month and another $30,000, we can automate all of that. So this is set to launch Q2 2021 to make sure that it's in time for our communities to support them on the pit count, because that's literally underway. And then the other one, which is obviously so interrelated with the homeless count, is the housing needs assessment. This is something that has been the bane of some of our existence on our team, because it's so repeatable. Like, it's the same, you read enough reports, you see that there's really only so many ways to tell the story about core housing need, right? And so there's a whole lot of this stuff that we can totally automate for communities so they can spend their time doing the work around equity, around engagement, true authentic community engagement, around putting together deals to bring units on the ground. Right now, people are way too busy, in my opinion, writing reports and then rewriting those reports because the data is out of date. What if we took that off the table en masse? what would you do? What would you do as decision makers then? And I think the opportunities that we can actually get to the change work that we're all here to do, not the paperwork that we have to do. So that's what's really, really exciting for me. We're starting out with the housing and homelessness focus, and then moving to domestic violence. But we're obviously really interested in all of the above, because once you kind of figure it out in one area, it's great for the rest. The other piece that my team's very, very conscious about is how important it is to share and to support uptake of this concept of integrated coordinated access, irrespective of us being there. So how much of this stuff can we open source for communities as well? There's so much that is happening in our team and in the communities that we have the privilege of supporting around the principles of integrated coordinated access. So this whole idea of no wrong door, right? So let's stop segmenting people by their problems and send them to this door for this and this door for that. And PS, you're more worthy of help if you have, if you've got these things going on versus these things. And that's not okay. We have enough resources in the ecosystem that we should be able to figure it out for everybody who needs help. I truly believe that that should be the holy grail, not developing ways of saying no, but rather developing ways of saying yes. So this whole concept of diversity, equity, inclusion, innovation, no wrong door, sector inclusive, all of these principles, what are the tools that we need to put into play and open source them so that you guys can all benefit from what we're learning without having to, to pay us to tell you something that we've already figured out. That's not what we're about, right? So we have enough work to keep us busy, but now we have enough capacity to open that up for everybody's benefit and put that into the knowledge commons for everybody to learn from. As much as we can contribute, we will. The digitalization or the digitization, so this shared information management, so all of you trying to figure out info management systems, we're getting a lot of calls for people confused about what this software is versus that one. We have some ideas. We're not going to be in the business of that. I want to kind of clarify, there's big players out there already. Our job is to help you make the right decision for your community and make sure you're getting a good deal for your community. I think that's really important. And to get a customized product that's going to meet your community's needs in a dynamic fashion. I mentioned the well-being screener and app. Those are pieces that are going to continue to flourish out of our product team, because there's so many ideas coming in on like, how can we develop tools to help people get help, to connect to help in ways that make sense. A youth, an Indigenous person's experience is going to be completely different. So we're needing to customize these offerings and make them free, right? Like we can do that. So as a B Corp, we don't have like a magical, shareholder that's, squeezing us for profit. We can actually reinvest funding in expansion or in better product development. That's the cool part about that. These digital tools are going to be continuing to pop up over the course of 2021. And now that, again, we've got more stability in our funding and we're able to staff up, like you saw, when we met most of you, we were like me and Travis, and now there's like people that just make us look like amateurs, to be honest. So it's awesome. It's awesome. We've got an amazing team, and we just are looking forward to all of you meeting them as well in 2021 as you interact with us further. And then people. So obviously all this work around human-centered design, the co-creation of these tools with lived experience. Sometimes people ask us like, what about, do you work with lived experience? We're like, oh no, we work with lived experience and living experience. This is a big deal because the tools don't have any traction if the people we're designing them for don't actually use them. So if you see where we start with tools and where they end up, that tells you that story. Like we get our stuff beat right up and we love it because of people that are using them in their practice. So be that as a client or be that as a frontline provider. So that piece is going to be coming up. The other one, and some of you have already seen, System Navigator training. Again, this is stuff that we offer to frontline services for free. And this is part of our work as a social enterprise, is to share what we learn and make that as accessible for Canadians as we possibly can. So series of webinars to actually train frontline services on actually how to do referrals appropriately, how to do assessments and triage and all of that. And there's certain things that need to be customized for communities, and there's certain things that are like general skill sets that like anybody should have, like you should have from refer your mom to, because she's probably like the go-to person in the family where everybody goes to for when they have problems. So we are doing this navigation training now that has proven to be so humblingly appreciated, because you never know if it's useful, and we've got so much great feedback about that. So look for more of those training opportunities we can put into the ecosystem and share that with your teams as you see it bring value. Tools. I think we talked about this, the ICA 101. So integrated coordinated access. There's going to be tons and tons of tools that we're going to be putting out through digitally or through these kind of webinars out there. Support around governance, support around how do we create these culturally competent and inclusive systems so that they're not perpetuating systemic racism, but rather challenging it, of course. These ability to create these basic templates so that you guys can get to the work of implementation rather than trying to figure this out every time. Like if we can figure it out and you can take what we learn and make it your own, and you can just bypass a whole bunch of pain, we're into that. So look out for those as well. And with that, I'll hand it over to Jenny to talk to you about our next session.
Thanks, Alina. So that was great. Thank you so much, Dina and Jamie. What wonderful presentations. You provided so much value. So thank you. And thank you everyone for hanging in there. I know we're a little bit over our time, but we had some really important information that we wanted to get across to you. So if you can just hang on for a few more minutes, we'll address a few questions. But before we do, I just wanted to mention that our next webinar, which is going to be the first one for 21, will be January 14th at 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time or 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And the topic will be homelessness and housing reports simplified. So we're going to discuss tools that streamline the curation of data, visualization, and report writing for the 21 PIT counts and housing needs assessments. So if you're in the housing sector, this will be one that you won't want to miss. Alina, do you have anything that you want to add about this webinar?
No, actually, that was perfect.
Okay.
I'm into that. Yeah.
Sounds good. And I'd also like to say, Alina mentioned it a few times throughout the presentation, but if you're interested in working with us, please reach out to me. My email address is Jenny, Jenny, at helpseeker.org. So Jenny at helpseeker.org. And also, as Elena mentioned, we also have a vested interest in working with Indigenous communities. So if you're involved with Indigenous work, you can, again, reach out to myself, or if you feel more comfortable, reaching out to Monique Fry. She's our VP of Indigenous Transformation and Diversity. And her email is similar to mine. Hers is Monique at helpseeker.org. So it's MONIQUE at helpseeker.org. So let's get on to the questions now. There was just really 3 questions that came in. So I'll just read those out now. So the first one was actually more of a comment or a suggestion. It was about, how about a webinar on the TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada, and systems planning. So thanks so much for that suggestion.
Yes. Consider it done. Consider it done. Yeah.
Also, do you see making a HelpSeeker available in the US, or are you staying only in Canada?
Oh, we actually get this question a lot. We get it from European colleagues. I would say we are Canadians. We wanna do this well in Canada. Now I'm not going to say never, because we're obviously gonna have to come to that, figure that one out at some point. But I would say at this point, we're really we focused on helping our home country get it right before we kind of like try to tell somebody else how to run their country. But yeah, I guess never say never. Just not something we're doing right now, but I could definitely see it at some future point for sure.
Okay, great. There any specific suggestions about how to encourage or enhance data literacy and or research literacy in this type of work?
Good one. I'm going to defer to Dina and Jamie, other than to say, like, we just need to break it down in meaningful pieces and put effort into digital literacy in our processes as well. This just have to be part of it. The reason the social sector is unfortunately a laggard is because we as the social sector haven't done our due diligence in supporting each other to get there. So that's again part of I see that as part of our mandate at HelpSeeker to support enhancing digital literacy. It's not appropriate, it's not ethical to put out technology without building that education alongside, so that people know and understand, like when data is collected, asking the right questions. And I think, just because we have that lens on our work doesn't mean other people do. So you need to be so critical and savvy, and it's happening without us right now. So we gotta get on that. Look for digital literacy courses from us as well, and webinars in 2021. We hear that quite a bit. And the more we get into this, machine learning, what the heck is that, right? We've done some data science 101 stuff before, and only to realize, like, whoa, we're just scratching the surface. There's a lot more that needs to be done here. So yes, and it's something that we're going to prioritize for sure, or continue to prioritize. Over to Jamie. I see her camera's off.
I think from a community perspective, that literacy around what that means is that responsibility at an organizational level and a system level to ensure that people are really understanding that, and that you invest in teaching people what that is and what it actually means, and the ability to translate that to the service participant or client that is actually accessing that. So it's not misinformed along the way. So that continuity of understanding goes from the top all the way to the end user. So from funder policy to end user, so that can be explained in a really thoughtful, thorough way. I think where you get a lot of bang for your buck, if you will, is around the frontline workers and them understanding that they can translate brilliantly. That's what they're there to do. So really important to do that. And that was a great question.
Okay, well, thanks, Jamie. I'm not sure if Dina has anything to add. Dina, have you got anything there that you'd like to add?
Sure, I can just say that I think one of our goals is to be able to get to the place where when we are sitting around the table through our multi-sectoral research design teams meetings or working groups, etc., that everyone has a command of the importance and value of data, and that are at a grassroots level, that our community is informed and they understand the ability that data supports collective decision making. And so I think that that's where we really look forward to being able to foster the digital access and equity and literacy that Alina had mentioned with the community. It will be significant for our local community to have that ability with data.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Dina. Okay, we had one last question come in, and I think probably then we'll want to wrap it up here, but who would I speak to about raising funds to support your work?
I guess it depends what you need. So like we said, the CMHC investment allows us, and I think I'm gonna like piggyback that question onto the another one that just came in. Is there any plans to move into smaller rural communities? We are obsessed working with rural communities. Actually, we love it because they are so innovative and nimble and agile. So we actually do, we have lots of rural communities that work with us. So in terms of how how we make sure like we actually can keep lights on and things like that and people are employed is we don't sell any of the front facing stuff that you guys see, like none of the apps that we develop and all those tools and things like that. Those are free. So you're like, well, how do you hire staff to actually do it? So what we do is like, we'll go in together, let's say on a partnership, and there might be an investor or a funder that's saying like, well, I'm really interested in addressing poverty or homelessness. And so sometimes we'll be part of a partnership with community to do that. So we're doing quite a bit of those right now with rural communities. So I'll kind of answer both questions at the same time, but in Alberta that are working, let's say, on transforming their social ecosystems, and they're wanting, for instance, to understand funding flows, or they want a needs assessment and a plan to address social issues. They might want systems mapping to understand what's operating in their community. And there might be like a call for proposals from government or from a private donor, et cetera. And so then we'll work together to come up with a proposal. Our team has become really good at writing proposals, because sometimes all of you are busy doing the work. So if we want this to happen, it's in our best interest to help you kind of make those proposals go through as well, to be able to fund some of this work. So that's one way that we do that as well. But if you're just looking for systems mapping, like that's free, right? Like that's already not, I don't want to say free, because obviously there's somebody, the taxpayers are technically paying for it already. So for us to do that work, so we don't double sell it, right? So Dina, for instance, has and again, we're pretty transparent about costs and things like that, but for us to have a license to get access, give Dina, the city of Abbotsford, license to that data, I think it's like 12 grand per year for us to do systems mapping and keep that up to date all the time and do all that marketing and engagement. But Dina doesn't then, like Dina holds that, so she can give it to anybody. Like we don't double sell it, if you will. So sometimes communities will say, well, okay, 12 grand. What about you put in 1,000, you put in 1,000, you put in 1,000. So, and it's all based on population. So rural communities are like $500 a year. Like it's not huge cost, but we understand that that's easier said than done. So we do help you with proposals and things like that or pitches to funders to make that happen. If you think this is something your community needs, we would be more than happy to do that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, everyone. That was the last question that we came in. So I think that came in, and I think that's a great way to end off. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Happy holidays to everyone. And I hope you can take some time to get a little bit of rest and relaxation in there to get started on the new year. So take care, everyone, and we'll talk to you soon.